leader representing the voice of students across South Africa's largest university, and a fierce advocate for equity and justice in higher education. Directly after that, we will pass over the podium for another 3 minutes to Sabato Nyamsenda, PhD candidate in political science at the University of Dar es Salaam, a young scholar deeply engaged in the questions of governance, development, and Africa's place in the world. Our student respondents, welcome.
Thank you very much, Program Director, the panelists who have just spoken. Generally, I am from 2 schools. Number one being the University of South Africa, the largest university on the continent, which is where I am a student of law, doing my LLB. But in your last remarks, you spoke about Pan-Africanism. And I wanted to inform you that my other school, which is the Economic Freedom Fighters, is where we're learning about Pan-Africanism. So we want to allay your fears that indeed young people are learning about Pan-Africanism. Minister, you spoke about the 10 key areas of the University of South Africa. I was counting down with you as you were mentioning them, and I realized that you had omitted the last one, which is the women Bosadi theorization, which is a very key catalytic niche area in which it seeks to address the challenges of triple oppression that the women face on our continent. And I'm lucky they said you must get an invite to South Africa where you'll get to learn more about the 10 catalytic niche areas of the university. Let me begin by saluting the presence of one of Africa's most astute intellectuals and champions of African Renaissance, the former President Thabo Mbeki. Your vision of a united and dignified and self-reliant Africa continues to inspire our generation. To the Professor and Vice Chancellor of the University of South Africa, I want to thank you for your relentless commitment to academic freedom and African-centered scholarship. To our host here in the United Republic of Tanzania, the land of President Julius Nyerere, whose leadership taught us that unity is not a luxury, but a necessity, I extend my deep gratitude for this platform. And to the young minds gathered here today from high schools and universities across, I greet you not just as a fellow student, but as a vanguard of the new era. I stand before you as a voice not of one, but of many, echoing from Cape to Cairo, Mogadishu to Lagos, and across the diaspora. I speak on the behalf of a generation that refuses to be confined to hashtags, side events, and symbolic youth codes. A generation that no longer accepts being called the future because we are here and we are ready for the now. Today we mark Africa Day not as a ceremonial occasion, but as a call for consciousness. More than 60% of Africa's population is under the age of 25, me included. That is not a burden. That is a superpower, but only if we channel it with purpose. Today, I challenge every young person to start organizing in their communities, not just online, but on the ground, as we've said, as we've listened to the latter speakers, as they've said. Let us educate ourselves, and let us dismantle ourselves from dependency, political and economical dependency. President Mbeki, like I have said, I address you as a member of the EFF, but also as the president of the UNISA National SRC, which is the largest university. Over this past week, the voice of the leader of the EFF echoed in the Oval Office in the United States, a moment both historic and symbolic. And this voice I'm speaking of is that of Julius Malema. President, we want to ask you as young people today, What should be the stance of the radical youth of this continent when the leaders of our continent are summoned to foreign capitals not as equals, but as spectators in the theater of humiliation? How do we as a generation, President, in pursuit of a total liberation, interpret the spectacle of the African heads of state being paraded and ridiculed in the same chambers that once legitimized slavery and colonialism and economic pillage? You, President Mbeki, have once clarified on more than one occasion that the chant "kill the Boer, kill the farmer" is not a literal incitement, but a political struggle song deeply rooted in resistance of our people. It is a chant of the landless, the dispossessed, and the economically excluded, President. It is not hatred, it is our history. It is the demand for nationalization of the banks, nationalization of the lands, and all strategic sectors, and of course the call for free education. Therefore, to the youth of Tanzania today, on Africa Day, we want to say that kill the Boer, kill the farmer, which has been ruled by courts in South Africa, is that the chant in its historical and political context does not constitute hate speech. It is a cry for justice. It is a cry for free quality education. That is why we will never retreat. We will never surrender the fight for economic freedom in our lifetime. We will never abandon the call for expropriation of land without compensation. Comrade DSG of the African National Congress, I'm happy you are here. What we saw as the delegation to the White House was a delegation of white patriarchal elites. The majority of black population of South Africa and Africa largely was glaringly absent in the Oval Office. Instead, golfers and capitalists represented our land, not the workers of this country, of this continent, and not the youth and not the women. And therefore, I ask you, DSG, was that not a betrayal of the democratic promise?
1 minute.
As we conclude, we must also characterize the evolving role in which China in Africa once stood shoulder with African liberation movement is not the same today. China that commands global trade routes, infrastructure corridors, and financial systems in the area of global capitalism, we must ask with revolutionary clarity, what is the role of China in Africa? Specifically in Tanzania, Minister. What should it be? Tanzania, like many African countries and states, has welcomed massive Chinese-led infrastructure projects, roads, ports, railways, and digital corridors. These are important, but infrastructure without local empowerment is a new form of dependency. We must not build highways to nowhere. We must not construct bridges while leaving Tanzanians unemployed and poor. We must ask China directly, as you build these massive infrastructure projects, are you transferring skills? Are you developing local capacity? Are you flying in engineers, drivers, cooks, and project managers from Beijing while the youth of Tanzania look on from the margins? We do not want projects built for Africa. We want projects built with Africans by Africans.
Thank you very much.
The cement must be Tanzanians, the welders must be Tanzanians.
Thank you so much.
And furthermore, we must reject the extractive model where Africa is reduced to a warehouse where raw materials are going to be extracted and a dumping ground for finished products from China.
Thank you very much.
Lastly, President Mbeki, I've got a message to you. I want to take this opportunity to thank you, to salute you, President Mbeki, that after your term of office, you did not cling to power. You did not rewrite constitutions. You did not become a noisemaker in retirement, but you rested and invested your time in the youth, You invested your time in the next generation and in advancing African renewal.
Thank you very much.
That is the leadership that we want, President Mbeki, and that has shown that you are a true statesman. And that is diversity. Thank you very much. Amanda!
Your Excellency, as you can see, we're in good hands, strong leadership. Let's hear a very short remark from our Tanzanian student as well, Sabato Nyamsenda. Please forgive me for cutting the time a little bit. We are behind schedule. Karibu sana, 3 minutes to give your response. Let's put our hands together.
Amandla, Maibuye, Iya Africa. Thank you for having me, President Mbeki. All protocols observed. Because of time, I'll be very brief. First, basically responding to Professor Shivji, Professor Kabegu, Professor Kabudi, as well as General Ulimwengu, who happen to be giant intellectuals, have also mentored me in different spaces. And they also happen to be top-notch lawyers in East Africa. And I happen to be a poor political scientist. So if they take me to court for misinterpreting their analysis, there will be no one to defend me. So one, let me start with the situation, like the actual situation, and basically agreeing with, I think, almost everything that they said, but just putting into context what the young people are going through in Africa. When I say young people, it means everyone below the age of 35. That also includes our young sisters and brothers, you know, whom we call children, because they have no one to speak to in this forum. So every 3 seconds, a child dies in Africa of hunger. Every 10 seconds, a child dies somewhere in Africa of preventable disease. For the 45 minutes that they were presenting here, about 900 students have died of hunger, and 270 more children have died out of preventable disease. The cure for hunger is known. For everyone, it's food, but the majority of our people cannot afford it because food is a commodity and it's not a right. Likewise, our people die of preventable disease, and especially the children of Africa, because apparently healthcare is also treated as a commodity and not a right. Every year, 12 million young Africans enter the labor market each year, but the lucky, only less than 1 million who happen to be employed in the formal sector. The majority go into the informal sector. They go for self-employment. And as you know, the informal sector is criminalized in most of our cities. When they are lucky enough to create markets where they don't exist, they get forcibly evicted. When the young people, oh, my 3 minutes are over.
30 seconds.
Okay, I get threatened by your movements. When they create markets where they don't exist, they get violently evicted, their mechanized confiscated, and some of them even jailed. That happens to the lucky ones, because the unlucky ones in the slums, if you go to Nairobi and elsewhere, I've been reading the same news in South Africa, they actually get murdered. And who murders them? It's the state, the African state that is there. I'm not speaking of individual leaders, but the African state and the class that presides over that state is at war with young people. So the African ruling classes don't even know what to do with, you know, all this youth bulge, 80% of the African population. So rather than seeing African people, young people as a blessing, it sees young people as a curse. So it has declared war on the youth, and this war is fought at different fronts. If you look at the economic front, and I'm glad my brother has introduced that, some of the points, by embracing the economic policies of neoliberalism, the economic system that is geared towards profit for the few and not welfare for the majority, a system that allows corporations to plunder the resources of Africa and engage in illicit financial transfers and all that, then this system actually impoverishes the majority of young people. I know, for instance, President Mbeki went to... How many minutes again?
Our time is up, so just your closing sentence, please. Your message you said to His Excellency.
So when it comes to young people, that's what we are going through. Thank you so much. So I will summarize. On Pan-Africanism, I listened to Professor Kabudi, and I have two suggestions. So the first suggestion is the shift from boardroom Pan-Africanism to street Pan-Africanism. So it's good to have SADC and the AU, but they have been there for more than 50 years. They have not done anything. Okay? On the contrary, street-based Pan-Africanism, which is popular and movement-based, it defeated segregationist policies in the US in the belly of the beast. It united the African liberation movements and liberated the African continent from the most barbaric colonial powers, including but not limited to Portuguese colonialism and apartheid in South Africa. I think it's time, just this one last point. I think it's time to take Pan-Africanism back to where it belonged, to the masses. If it defeated imperialism in its strongest form, that is colonialism, then it cannot fail to defeat imperialism in its ramshackle and terminal phase, that is neoliberalism. The last point, last point, is that we are impatient as young people.
I can see.
We take issue with Agenda 2063, not because we reject long-term plans, but we think it's not radical enough, and because we cannot wait for other 50 years for radical transformation and unification for Africa. When Utanu was fighting for independence, they told my grandmother to wait. She waited for so many years until she died in 2007 without witnessing a united and prosperous Africa. After independence, they told my father to wait. He waited for so many years until he passed last year without witnessing a united and prosperous Africa. And now they are telling us to wait until 2063 when they will not even be there to be held accountable. And some of us are going to be too old. Just this one. I am saying that young people...
And that wasn't even me. Asante sana, Sabato, for your remarks. Please can we put our hands together for both of our student speakers. I don't know about you, but it reminds me that there was more I could have done in my youth. The power, the energy that these young men have. So let us put our hands together for the two student respondents, Nkosinati Mabilane and Sabato Nyamsenda. I'm sorry, time did not allow for the full speech, and maybe you'll get the honor of a private audience with His Excellency. You never know. Now, let us conclude our program. We still have a couple of agenda items that are very, very important. So at this point, Your Excellency, I would like to invite you back up to the stage as we have some gifts that need to be given out. And so we would like to welcome you to the stage with your entourage, if you could come up.